Good day, everyone. I just wanted to start off by thanking the Primal Picture team and community for inviting me to talk on today's webinar. It's an absolute honor and to connect with my fellow anatomists. Just a short introduction of myself. I am Miss Vuvu Radebe, and I am a junior lecturer in the Division of Movement Science and Exercise Therapy in the Faculty of Health and Medicine at Stellenbosch University. I am a biokineticist by training, and I currently lecture both undergraduate and honors modules, undergraduate to our sports science students and honors in biokinetics, kinetics and performance sports. My main area of focus for my teaching and learning is anatomy, biomechanics, clinical anatomy, functional anatomy, and its application, and then using exercise as a treatment modality, particularly for neuromusculoskeletal injuries. So that's a little bit about me, and I have the privilege of just chatting a little bit about my use of Anatomy TV, particularly hosted by Primal Pictures, and how I maximize on my experience there. I started using Anatomy TV, I would say 3 years ago when I studied. Unfortunately, we didn't have such software and technology, and I don't only use it for my own teaching and learning, but in my own personal capacity. I'm sure we all know, as the literature gets updated, as more research is being done, I need to always keep up to date with anatomy, and so I use it just to continue to upskill myself. And as I've been lecturing anatomy through many of the different levels, I know that it is one of the more challenging subjects. And I think what I've really enjoyed is that you don't have to imagine anything with Anatomy TV. It's all right there in front of you. So it really just makes tackling this challenging subject and this challenging concept quite easy, the way that it breaks everything down. So yeah, that's just been a little bit about me and my journey with the Anatomy TV and Primal Picture community. So my first point of reference, or my first starting point, is actually accessing the platform. At the university, we have an agreement with Primal Pictures, and so therefore I have access to it through the university. And so I normally access it when I'm on campus. It's quite nice. As long as I'm on the Wi-Fi, I can access it directly. If I'm not on Wi-Fi and I'm working remotely, like today, I can then just log in through our library's website and I have access to it, which really does make it, it's a great opportunity for myself personally, and I encourage all my students to take advantage and make use of it while they do still have access through the university. And for those not in the university, I still recommend it and say, it is something that you should sign up for and subscribe to. But yeah, that's actually what I start off with, is just accessing the platform and how to get in. So in terms of a starting point when it comes to Anatomy TV, is I actually start with 3D Atlas. It is my starting point. I find it just helps go over the basics of the region that I'm working in. It's quite nice because it's broken down into the different body parts, and so when I'm planning my semester, I can align it exactly with each of the headings within 3D Atlas. So if I'm starting with the axial skeleton, or if I'm starting at the hip, then I can work through it in line. It also has a optional slides function, which is really nice in terms of content creation. As a lecturer, we spend a lot of time working on the actual content that we want to deliver. So it's nice to have a platform where I've got some content that I can deliver, and I can also supplement what I do have with the slides there. The students as well, I encourage all the students to go on and have a look at the slides that are available. So 3D Atlas is my starting point, just because it forms a good foundation. I also really like the fact that it's got biomechanical movies. And so when I studied, we had to rely a lot on our imagination, and in terms of, like, we all know there's a lot of muscles that are superficial and you can see them and you can palpate them, but there's a lot of deep ones that you don't actually know of, and instead of having to imagine them, those biomechanical movies are really great. I also use it as a nice way to supplement my actual lecture slides in a way that it's 2D when I'm lecturing, whereas if they're looking at a movie, they can see it in a more practical setting. And so that's what I normally start with. So 3D Atlas as a title is normally where I start each chapter, and it's quite nice because it's split into the different regions of the body. And so when I'm preparing my content for the semester, I can then, as I'm preparing the content for the semester, I can align it to the different headings within 3D Atlas. The next title that I use often is 3D Real Time. After spending some time in 3D Atlas, as a foundation, I spend a lot more time in 3D Real Time, particularly because of the dissections. As we all know, it's not necessarily easy to get access to actual dissections, or to go into the lab to do dissections, and so it's nice that there is that option now. You don't have to go to the lab to do your dissections, it is there. And I also like the way I can manipulate the layers of where I'm looking. So you don't have to imagine a muscle sitting underneath another muscle, or the nerve that could be involved. You can lift the layers and put the layers back on. So I really enjoy that as an aspect. I also like the way I can move the diagram around. I spend a lot of time just flipping. If you're looking from a prone, if you're looking from this, like just moving the diagrams around, and I can pin certain landmarks as well. Yeah, that's sort of what I spend a lot of my time when it comes to 3D Real Time. And yeah, the fact that I don't have to imagine the different layers, I can take them off and add them as I need. And as I'm lecturing, if I'm starting just on the bone, I can have just bones, and if I want to add the ligaments in around there, I can add that layer of ligaments. And if you click on the actual information, it pops up text, which then can supplement, whatever I'm lecturing on. And I can add layers of muscles, and it separates the muscles into a way that is understandable. So we will look at like anterior muscles. We know it's really sitting on the front, and then we've got like these different layers of muscles. So that's what I really get my students to engage a lot on, is on 3D Real Time. When I first started using Primal Pictures, I didn't actually like the way that it opened up a new tab a new window every time I clicked on something, particularly between the titles. But I now really enjoy it, because I can jump between like 3D Atlas, 3D Real Time, and have both of them open quite easily. I don't have to just go back forward between. So I really do now like that as a feature. And yeah, definitely a lot of my time is spent in 3D Real Time, just because there's so much functionality in terms of layers moving, and the actual text boxes that are there. So yeah, that's sort of how I go about covering my content when it comes to anatomy, particularly for my undergraduate students, just as they're starting to work with the human body and what works and what doesn't work. And then, yeah, sort of once I have the basics down on understanding anatomy, I spend some time on the functional anatomy and therapy side of things, just because I lecture to sports scientists and professions that apply exercise therapy, and particularly have to have a good understanding of anatomy to apply our exercise principles. And so this is something that I really enjoy, is the functional anatomy aspect. You can see the person doing the movement. It's got really nice little animations. You can do push-ups and squats and whatever it might be, and you can see which muscles are involved and producing the movements and those sorts of things. So yeah, the functional anatomy I really enjoy. And it also has Pilates and yoga, although it's not doesn't cover everything that we would do as a profession, but it's nice for them to understand the principles and to see it moving and to see the little stick figures and to see the little diagrams and the animations. So yeah, I really enjoy applying this, and in my tutorials and in my practical classes as well, we will do a lot on doing an exercise, doing a movement, and then comparing it to some of the videos that are available on the functional anatomy or the Pilates and the yoga side of things. So yeah, that's just a little summary of what and how I use Anatomy TV, particularly for my sports science and my honors students. So yeah, more at our undergraduate level, we cover the basics, and then at an honors level, we start to move more into disease and pathology. And that's actually quite nice, is that on Anatomy TV, there is a title slide there for diseases. And yeah, that's where we will start to work a little bit more. But it's more later in the programs that they look at that. So I spend a sufficient amount of time on 3D Atlas and 3D real time, just to get the basics down, and then thereafter we look at your functional anatomy, and then only in the postgraduate we'll look more at your pathologies and your diseases and so forth. So yeah, that's a summary of how I make use of Primal Pictures. Like I said, it's just been so nice to have had studied without access to any of this software, to now be able to lecture and upskill myself. I've found as a lecturer, it's really made my amount of time spent on content creation it's shorter, the information's right there. You can screen grab, you can save, and you can use it for slides. So that's just something I personally have been so grateful for, is that it just makes collation of information and, you know, transferring that information over to students a lot more streamlined and easier. And then as a practitioner myself, I've just enjoyed upskilling myself constantly and having a community of anatomists that are constantly researching, working on, and sharing information and keeping up to date with the latest in anatomy. So that's been my journey. I also must say the Primal Pictures team have been so helpful. No matter what it is, they'll always help me, if it's navigating software or if it's helping train students on how to use the platform. That's just been my journey thus far. And yeah, I hope that you have all found today's session valuable and insightful. I think what I've really loved about the Anatomy TV platform is it's so easy to navigate once you have spent some time on it, and you can navigate between the different titles, and it just makes grasping the concept of anatomy just so much easier. I know it can be quite an overwhelming module, but just having something at my fingertips that I can just help students with has just been something I really appreciate. So yeah, thank you once again to Primal Pictures for having me, and having me a part of the anatomy community. Yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. And if you have any other concerns or questions for me personally, you feel free to contact me. But I really just have enjoyed my relationship and being able to work with the software that I have.